now. It's we're rolling.
All right. Okay.
So what are we talking about here today, Mr. Sean?
Sean, pitch.
I offered the cinema gem that's Conan the Destroyer from 1984, directed by Richard Fleischer.
And why did you do that to us?
Because at least I always thought it was amazing. I was a big fan of both films. Conan the Barbarian, 1982, Conan the Destroyer, 1984. The Conan the Barbarian is more of a like an artsy fartsy film. And you could see how it could be taught in like classes on sociology in the Bronze Age and stuff. And it was rated R, and there was non-cartoon violence, and it was pretty intense, especially the opening sequence there in Conan the Barbarian. And I was such a fan of that one that, you know, even when Conan the Destroyer came out, I still liked it. It was the same character, basically, which was cool. It seemed a little goofier, Conan the Destroyer, but it was just, it was made for a PG-13 audience. And so, you know, things had to change, and it switched producers.
Interesting.
Conan the Destroyer is Dino DeLaurentis, and he was, you know, I guess he was Italian, so he was always kind of artsy, but he was really in it for the money.
He also produced our last great hit, Orca.
Yeah, that's true. Orca.
Orca.
And just like with Orca, I had never seen a Jaws, which is not obviously the same franchise, but was a big influence. And just like that, I have not seen Conan the Barbarian in so long that I might as well not have never seen it because I don't remember it. That's how long ago it was when I watched it.
There's another bit of Orca trivia on this.
You just can't let the Orca thing go, Seth, can you?
Well, it's a Dino DeLaurentis piece of trivia and a Bo Derek piece of trivia. Olivia D'Abo, who is the princess, the 16-year-old virgin princess in this, plays the peasant girl in Bolero, Bo Derek's movie that her husband, John, and her made for Canon Films. And we'll be doing probably a few Canon films in the future.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
So.
But for the cast of Conan the Destroyer, we have Arnold Schwarzenegger, one of the greatest actors of all time, along with Grace Jones, who was very popular at the time. She was a singer. I never knew this. I just thought she was Grace Jones, but
she's also Jamaican.
She was Jamaican, and she was big into Studio 54, which was right before.
You're saying was. Is she no longer with us?
Oh, I'm not sure.
But she was Studio 54.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
She was dating Dolph Lundgren.
Okay, gotcha.
Who was her bodyguard. And
that's really interesting.
And they were living not far from where I live now in Chelsea. They were sort of Greenwich Village, West Village, really, West Highway legends.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Speaking of muscular people,
also Grace Jones was a singer. I have a friend who would go to Studio 54 back in the day, and she told me a funny anecdote about Grace Jones. Is that Grace Jones had the androgynous look, and she kept her hair short, but she was, you know, kind of manly and aggressive. So there was a rumor that she had a dick. She doesn't. Yeah. She's an actual woman, but
she's still doing stuff.
Is she?
Yeah. She was ranked in that. Well, this is a while ago now, but she was ranked 82nd on VH1's 100 Greatest Women of Rock and Roll. And she was honored with a Q Idol award. She's a big influence on that whole androgynous thing that she was doing. There's a lot of pop stars have kind of been influenced by that. apparently.
Yeah.
Rihanna, Lady Gaga, Annie Lennox.
Annie Lennox. I had a
Yeah.
Lennox album. The one,
Yeah.
but the way that Grace Jones played her career is that my friend who went to Studio 54 said that Grace Jones would put on a strap-on underneath a dress, go to Studio 54, dance around and twirl so the dress would lift, and then people would kind of get a glimpse of something, and then she would stop just so she would keep that rumor alive.
So she was really like, she was a really clever.
Yeah, she was Madonna before Madonna. So.
Yeah, interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
I
didn't know much about her.
Put up with that.
Judy's mic looks like it's muted. Is that for a reason?
Yes. I have my
Okay. I
child.
was just. Just wanted to make sure everything was all right.
Yeah, next on the list is Wilt Chamberlain, who is basically a basketball player. I don't think he didn't do many films, but
he was more famous for something else.
He was more famous for something else than basketball.
Because he had sex with 1,000 women or something.
20,000 women.
20,000.
Now,
10,000 days is like 10 and a half years. So
I did the math.
Okay, please.
So if Wilt Chamberlain was 55 years old when he released that book that said that he slept with 20,000 women, that means that he would have slept with 500 women a year between age 15 and age 55.
I don't buy it.
I don't buy it.
I'm guessing he estimated.
He guestimated, yeah.
He estimated.
I don't buy it.
I'm sure it was a lot, though. I mean,
Yeah.
he wouldn't need to make something like that up. Why would he just lie about? I mean, sleeping with a lot of women. I mean, it's probably true. It's an unhealthy addiction for a lot of big athletes. You know, you hear about it all the time, and men who do that and women who. It's not really good for your health.
It's not. But he was more in the 70s, I think.
This is a different time. Yeah.
So next on the cast is Mako, who plays Akiro the Wizard. So Mako,
that guy.
He was around. I think he's brilliant. That's another thing about the cast. I think it was acted I thought they were all great. Because next was Malik, who played the little thief. That actor's name is Tracy Walter, who is Jack Nicholson's, like, one of his best friends.
Yeah, did 11 films with Jack Nicholson. He's like
including Batman, Tim Burton's
Batman. He's
Bob, the number one guy.
The number one.
Well, he has a similar acting technique. He seems to have a similar shtick to like a guy like what we were just talking about.
Well, what's
Jack Nicholson?
What's interesting is Jack Nicholson's acting teachers in this movie too.
Oh, really?
Jeff Corey. There's 2 acting teachers in this movie.
Really?
Mako or Mako. Is it Mako or Mako? Mako.
We'll go with Mako.
Sure. Ran an acting school in LA that John Milius, who wrote Conan the Barbarian and directed, sent Jerry Lopez, who is not in this movie, as is not John Milius, who was slated to direct it, and recommended Fleischer. He was an acting teacher, and Jerry Lopez studied with him on the orders of John Milius for the first film. Jeff Corey is like has a book. I can't remember what it's called. It mentions improvisation in the title. But he was one of Jack Nicholson's principal teachers, and a lot of other people's teachers, including no one that I can think of off the top of my head. So I should really look up Jeff Corey.
But one last thing about Mako is that he was the only other character besides Arnold Schwarzenegger to make the leap to the second film. Which I thought it was just always kind of cool, because Mako also narrated both films. even in Conan the Barbarian, he would narrate the film in future tense, which I thought was kind of cool because you don't see a lot of examples of that. And then that carries over to this one to Conan the Destroyer, because they meet up halfway in the journey. Oh, and one last thing, why I think this film Conan the Destroyer is more of a kids like movie. People always judge the two films right next to each other, and they're two different films. They're two different films, same characters, but they really are two different genres.
They're two different genres. Yeah, I can see that.
You can't really compare. That's why I like them both, because I see them both for what they are. It's like Days of Thunder is race cars, but Pixar's Cars they're two different films, but they're about race cars. Still kind of cool. Anyway, so that's just how I approach this whole thing.
Well, I think on a certain level, that's kind of what you're describing there is sort of what makes the movie relevant to this podcast, to this platform, because it's peculiar. It's peculiar in that, like, the whole point of the movie was to make a lot of money.
Yes.
And in order to make a lot of money, they said they made the calculation. Well, let's make a movie that, just like the last Conan, that's going to be really good, but also that kids can go see. And by doing that, they end up with a lot of very awkward, incongruent dynamics, which the big elephant in the room for me, which we'll probably hit on at some point down the line and circle back to, is the idea that, like, this is a romance movie. There's a female lead who's underage, who's got the hots for Arnold Schwarzenegger. And they have a really weird, awkward kiss at the end. And Arnold is clearly uncomfortable about this whole thing. And he's just like, no, I can't be in a relationship with you because I have to go be a king by myself.
Right. I kind of dig that alpha crap. I really do.
No, it's good.
Yeah.
It works. It works. But the whole thing is, like, you can see them trying to work around the awkwardness of this strange love tension going on, and they had to make Schwarzenegger completely uninterested in her, or else it would have been like sort of pederasty kind of territory. That's the only way they were able to make that work. And that was one of my biggest takeaways from it, that makes it a kind of a bizarre movie.
Yeah, I think they had to solve that problem early, because because Queen Taramis, she says to Bambata, who played by Wilt Chamberlain, says no one's to touch her. She needs to be a virgin. So then that kind of issue's like, no, but then it kind of gets comic, because the little, because that blonde girl is like, ooh, do you think Conan's handsome? I think he's handsome. And then he tries to do it, and so you get that cutesy, you get that cutesy thing, but Conan's like, wait a second, I'm for Valeria. Because that started off the whole movie. Queen Taramis says, hey, Conan, you were thieving, we're going to get you, but go on this journey and I'll bring back Valeria. And the Queen Taramis has some magic, so she knew she could read, Conan's mind, which I thought was kind of cool. Another thing I like about this movie, magic's real. I dig that. If you're going to have swords and stuff, have it all. I'm surprised there weren't elves, like in the whole Dungeons and Dragons thing, because I kind of dug that too, how it was like this fantasy film, kind of like Lord of the Rings, but
was there more magic in this than was there any magic in the original Conan?
There is magic in the original Conan.
But there was that one seance where Conan died, and then they were going to bring him back to life after
there's also the scene where Conan has sex with the witch.
Oh yes.
And she prophesizes where he needs to go to find Tulsa Doom, and then she turns into when she orgasms, she turns into a bolt of fire.
Into a bat, right? And then he goes like this. He had his sword. He goes, Craw.
Yeah.
Wow, that sounds like an insane movie.
Yeah.
So that's a good example of how different these two films are, because no one is getting it on.
No.
In this movie.
Which is cool. I mean, it's fine. So what? That's what I like. But that's why Conan goes on the journey.
Wait, but while we're on the topic of nobody getting it on, Can we talk about that scene where what's his name? The character actor. Tracy
Walter? Malik.
where Tracy
Tracy
Walter
Walter.
is sort of groping and molesting Bo Derek.
Olivia
Not Bo
D'Abo.
Derek. No. Sorry.
Grace
Grace
Jones.
Jones.
Grace
I'm
Jones.
getting all these names. Yeah, that scene where he's putting ointment on her and he keeps putting his hand further up her thigh. And he's like, wasn't that the super weird, like, kind of thing you would never see in a film nowadays?
No, yeah. But it was also.
What do you think
but it
about
was
that,
also
Judy?
immature.
It was just awkward. I had a hard time like following the movie. The movie for me felt like I was watching a lot of really good filmmakers just not take too seriously the work, but have a blast making it. Like that's what I felt from watching it. And now my son's crying in the other room.
Yeah, this looks like a movie that was fun to make, except for
It looked like I
politically.
would want to make this film with them and like have a sword. And like my favorite scene was when with Grace Jones like fighting off the extras, and like she just like, and everybody like jumps back. And I was just
That
like,
was
that
really
was so
good.
enjoyable for me. I don't know why. There's some movies where it's like the background takes on like its own thing, and for the townspeople or whatever they are, I felt like they really got to like I almost just wanted to be there to see them just be like, okay, she's really scary, and I'm like, is she?
And
Like, did she
there's a
really knock
reason
you
for
guys
that.
over?
Well, it's kind of like it looks like it was just like one big Renaissance fair for everybody.
It does look like it looks like a Ren fair. It looks like they borrowed the costumes from the last movie, which when I worked at a
They had
Ren
them in
fair, because I
storage.
did,
Yeah.
that was something we did at the Ren fair. We just gave you last year's costumes to next year's actors.
Yeah.
But before
But
I
as far
forget,
as the rubbing the thing on the leg, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think she sort of is giving them this look during it, like, what are you doing? And I loved that because it's like they didn't play around with like, I feel like in a lot of these movies they have the women that are just like, oh, it's okay, like they just like sort of glow along, and she's just like real, like, what are you doing? Like not like scared, but just like, oh, little man, what are
She's
you?
powerful.
What is you
That's
what I
really
like
about
doing?
her.
Yeah, it was kind of one of many examples of which this movie was sort of politically ahead of its time. I mean, in terms of social interaction, the way that they dealt with race issues. I mean, the fact that they had the way that they gave everybody sort of equal. They didn't really typecast Grace Jones. She wasn't like the token black warrior person. They managed to do it in this very nuanced way, that being like, it's the 80s now, everything is fine, we're all the same, almost there was more of a sense of solidarity in that than you see today with the kind of identity politics being such a big deal. It's sort of refreshing to see like a movie where it's like a bunch of different people with different races, different backgrounds, and they're all doing this thing together. It's American, it's it just, I don't know.
No,
it's
I
a
get
different
it.
time.
I think what I liked about Grace Jones's character was that in that scene that Judy mentioned, it's that when Conan he like approached her slowly and she didn't attack him, and he let her free, and then he gave her the stick, and you could see in her face that she's like, yes, now I get to fight these guys. The one thing I like about her is that she really likes to fight. And I gave her that much of a character. So, like as Abram was saying, she was like less of a victim and more of like a proactive character.
and Grace Jones, according to Arnold Schwarzenegger, and according to herself, I think on an Arsenio Hall show, broke bones of stunt people. So there's a reason why they're jumping back in those
That makes
scenes.
sense now.
And because they're afraid of her. I think so. Yeah,
Really
Man, I would love to see the behind the scenes of that scene.
And also,
probably
according to trivia I found online, she and Wilt Chamberlain didn't get along because she wouldn't turn off her boombox.
That would kind of piss me off too, but yeah. So in the background, the trailers are there, they're off, and she's just like playing Donna Summer on the boombox because it's 1984.
I don't know what she was playing on the boombox.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Didn't like it.
That's crazy.
They shot this in Mexico, and they actually had, which probably made it extra fun. And they actually had to order a horse for Wilt Chamberlain from Spain because they couldn't find any horses that his legs didn't hang down to the floor.
Oh my God.
That's how big Wilt Chamberlain is.
Oh, wow.
Let me just mention for all our younger audience members, back in the 80s, like half the movies out there were people riding horses. I just got to say that. That's like a lost art now. There's no movies where anybody really rides a horse, and if they do, he's a rancher and he's cute. But back then in the 80s, nearly half of all movies had somebody riding a horse. So all these actors also had to ride horses too, which I can't even imagine learning.
That's probably got to be a long-standing tradition.
Yeah.
Because I mean, think about what movies were. All that movies were when they first came out in the turn of the century were like Western, chases and people on horses and riding around.
It was something actors lied about a lot, about whether they could ride a horse on auditions.
Because it was like such a big integral part of the storylines that were being told. And so it sounds to me like you're saying that, if anything, the 80s saw some kind of renaissance or resurgence in like horses featuring in films.
I think so. Yeah.
You could.
Interesting.
I mean, they were definitely, and John Milius talks about this in the DVD to Conan the Barbarian. There were like the precursors to like PETA at the horse stunts.
Yeah, because some of those horses, I'm like, oh, I was cringing because they would get like he punches out like Conan punches out a camel. Of course. And they must have had he didn't really punch out a camel, but
they pulled it down with wires
and cut. Pull the bridle. What?
They pulled him down with wires. It's actually cut from the UK version. There's a UK version and an American version, and I can't remember who was bigger on cruelty to animals. And you can't do that, but that camel is being pulled down by force. You can't do that in a movie anymore.
Yeah, that was crazy.
So there's some serious animal rights ethic issues in this film, then, by today's standards.
By today's standards, yeah. I mean,
the punching the camel thing just seems it's very strange.
Yeah, it was
a funny touch.
Go ahead.
And he hit other animals too.
A little bit. But the camel was an homage from the first one because he did that.
I got you.
In the first one, that's why when Malik he like refers to the camel as like an old friend. That's why the camel spat on Conan, and then he's like, "Whoa!"
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I guess the camel remembered. Yeah. Anyway, but after Malik and Conan, they get this request to take the Virgin with Bombanta and to go get the jewel of I forget what the jewel's name was, but there was this special jewel that only she could touch because she's a virgin and magic, and they need the jewel because it's a key to something else. That's the horn of Daggett that Queen Taramis needs to rule to be at the side of a god who rules the world. And one of the things that I thought reminded me of like a journey fantasy films, because like after he got his thing, he had Bombata and Malik, and then Olivia D'Abo. They went and they got Mako first because they needed a wizard. So now you have your band of merry mates. You have a barbarian, a thief, and a wizard to go on this thing. And then soon after that, they ran into Grace Jones, which I guess she's a ranger, if you're going to stick to this Dungeons and Dragons theme, for that whole band of people to go and get the thing. And let me just say another reason why this film is underrated, because the music is phenomenal. It's one of the best scores.
Yeah, it's Basil Polidorus.
Yeah. Another Italian.
Is he Italian?
Yeah.
I thought he was. I don't. You sure?
Pretty sure. Or Greek. Anyway.
What's the composer's name? I'm gonna look it up. I have
Basil Polidoris. It's
Basil.
almost exactly the same score as Conan the Barbarian.
Nah, the Destroyer's more punchy.
It's
You,
a
like
little
you
more
would you
punchy.
would listen to that at the gym getting psyched up, you know. It's not beautiful, it like kind of pumps you up, makes you feel epic. That's one of the things I like.
Basil Polidoris is American.
Oh,
He's from Missouri. I mean, he's Greek. He's a Greek Orthodox guy, but
I was hoping for
No.
like an Italian trifecta with this again.
no,
Trying
No.
to keep it.
no. He seems to have grown up in a very traditional Greek Orthodox home. You know, but he was very much an American. He was very much an American. He died in 2006. He was he's got some interesting credits. He did Les Miserables in '98. He did Free Willy
98.
and
Free
Wow.
Willy.
yeah, he did Free Willy. He did The Hunt for Red October.
Well.
What?
I mean, he came about at a time that was Conan the Barbarian. I think was one of the first ones he ever did. He did The Hunt for Red October and RoboCop.
Those are both great scores.
See?
He was doing it for a long time. Started in the
He's
70s.
acknowledged as a really great score writer.
And it's funny, I didn't even really notice because I think it just blended so seamlessly with
Yeah.
the visuals that I didn't even notice the film score didn't stand out to me. And that's probably a good sign because like as a musician, I'm always like, if the music is too interesting, I know that the film composer doesn't really know what he's doing. Like, because I understand what it takes to be a good film score person. I never went down that rabbit hole. I have a lot of other friends that did. It's never interested me that much, but like, I think it's a strange art form that's it's sort of been lost. Like, you know, I mean, think about all the like, who's one of my favorite contemporary directors? It's Tarantino. He's got songs in all of his films. That's, you know.
But from that era, he
Sometimes.
really picks out. The one thing I like about him, he picks out the exact song for the exact feeling.
No, yeah, exactly, and it's amazing, and I love that. But it's also like a completely different style, and it's sort of, I think it's kind of eclipsed the tradition of scoring a film and trying to fit music that seamlessly makes the action and the visuals work together and blends into one whole thing is a different approach, you know. But it's amazing to me how little I noticed the music. He must have done a really good job.
Yeah, it like blends together. The one thing I like about, like, for myself, I tell myself about score is that, can the music complement, like, is it complementing the image? And if it does, like, it really like enhances the image, and the music kind of makes it three-dimensional, which I always look for that. And then so then in Conan the Destroyer, they have these married people together, and just as a thing for the filmmaking sequence, when they go to that tower to go get the jewel, and they camp for the night, like it's basically no dialogue for 20 minutes after that. I mean, a little bit, but not, but I always, in big stretches where there's just no dialogue through the sequence, which I always like that, especially in a movie. Like, if you could have like 10 minutes of action with no dialogue, I think that really kind of is, A, it explains good filmmaking, but B, it kind of hits the audience in like a thing, because then you get real meditative into the story. And the wizard, I think it's I can't find his name on my list here, but the wizard like turns himself into an eagle and picks up her, because somehow he just needs the chick. He says to himself, "I need you," or gives him whatever.
That's like Matt Painting Land, though, for me. Suddenly that became like a different movie.
Yeah,
Suddenly
but
it's a ending story.
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing. It's a chapter.
That's what made all these incongruent things, and like what Judy touched on before about the fact that she couldn't really follow the story in some ways. all that stuff is true, and I think actually made the movie a lot less boring. Like when I first started, the beginning of the movie, I was like, oh, I'm gonna watch a dumb, boring fantasy movie. It was sort of a slog for somebody who hasn't seen it before, and thinking like that this is setting the tone for just like but then it goes off the rails dumb once they get to that castle in the middle of the water. That's when the movie starts to get really good, because it's just one insane thing after another, and you're like, oh, it's this kind of a ride.
Yeah.
Okay, I can get on board with that, because it's just going to be some insane stuff, and it's going to be hilarious, and Arnold Schwarzenegger is going to do so many amazing things consciously and unconsciously for the remainder of this movie. I'm definitely down with this. This is going to be entertaining. I wasn't hooked until all that crazy castle shit happened. That shit just blew me away. And how ridiculous it was, just ridiculous on top of ridiculous on top of ridiculous. Like I could totally understand why you picked the movie after that.
Yeah, let me just say that that's true. You gotta, it's like a quest. You gotta go on the thing and do the thing and whatever else. Yeah. And then that staircase up the thing is beautiful. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's true. It takes him like 5 minutes to get up there and 20 seconds to leave. That's true, but I mean, I can live with that. That's fine with me.
I didn't even notice.
Yeah, you didn't even, because it was good. You go up the thing, and then there's the mirrors and whatever, and you're like, where are we? It was all dirt and horses. Now it's clean.
Now we're in a Jodorowsky movie. Now we're in the wizard.
Where's the mind? You know, it's like now you're in the mind of what it is to be a wizard. And I just thought it was funny. The wizard takes Olivia D'Abo and puts her in like a Sears bedding of 1982 of Sears bedding, like a yellow white comforter. I always thought that was weird. It's like, wait a second, you're a wizard that could turn yourself into firebirds, but you have a room, a bed, you have bedding, and I just would imagine it and like an alarm clock there, maybe a spy novel he reads before he goes to bed, like all that. That's what I mean. It's kind of goofy, but I guess he needed a bed to put her down in, and they just ordered one out of a catalog. But that's fine with me.
Yeah, why was she handcuffed to was she handcuffed to the bed, or just like locked in a room with a bed?
No, she was in a trance.
Like,
ooh.
That's so weird. Yeah.
But it's like primal.
Like, I didn't even question it though. What's wrong with me? I didn't even. Everything was so stupid.
Well, they made it that way. It's like for a lot of the movies, you have to suspend reality in order to go on the journey. And a lot of times they'll only have one or two devices, but this one, it was just like the everything. Just suspend reality and just come with us.
Right.
Which is why I think it's just a fun movie. You know? It's just pure entertainment, which is so sometimes refreshing to see, because a lot of times in today's movies, it's like, you know, these filmmakers want you to like think, and like it's this deep subject, like especially to like win an Oscar, it has to be some like epic statement or something. And like it's just nice to sometimes just watch like a fun movie.
Well, it's funny because me and Seth were talking about this phenomenon earlier, that like, you know, I think that like clearly the center of gravity in like the highest level of narrative genre is becoming the TV series. That's where people are putting a lot of energy into telling these really intense, hard stories, the things that have so many layers and philosophical implications, and that energy is not going into movies as much anymore. And maybe movies will become like a sort of campy genre in the future, where like people, oh, you're gonna make a movie, like, you want to do that story? That's not really going to work for television. Maybe, you know, just go make a silly movie with it. I could see it kind of moving in that direction, and we could end up getting more things. We could end up recapturing what Judy's talking about, is just like kind of like that fun, like let's go to the movies and have a little kid, you know, kiddish kind of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It might, but I don't know if they're going to do it with like, I feel like all those big budget movies now, they need to appeal to like the world in order to make money.
It's true.
So
I don't like that. I don't
where
like that
the
either.
fun might come in the independent filmmakers that aren't going to have like $100 million.
Well, the whole thing might become more balkanized and independent over time anyway. So you'll have that. Who knows?
Yeah,
That's my prediction.
I have no idea what's going to happen.
This movie was of a time also that if you were a fantasy fan, if you were a sword and sorcery person, you didn't have much option. Like, it was kind of like if you were into porn and you had like Playboy and Penthouse and Hustler and
maybe a Hustler, yeah,
and
maybe a Hustler.
But sword and sorceries movies, you had Conan the Barbarian, you had Conan the Destroyer, you had Red Sonja, which comes out the next year. By the way, the guy who wrote Red Sonja just died.
But Seth, to add to your point, there wasn't much, but what else there were the cartoons. There was the Lord of the Rings cartoons in '81.
He-Man.
Ralph Bakshi had a thing. Yeah, He-Man. So it was really nice to see it, like to get it out of the mind and out of the cartoon and see two dudes with swords. Two dudes with swords. What's wrong with that? Oh, and Judy's point, she left. But what the Judy was saying before about how it's like relaxing and fun to get in there, but also what makes it interesting are like the very primal mythos there of just humanity. It's like Olivia D'Abo. What's her real name? Princess Jenna, right?
Princess
she's
Jenna,
a virgin, but
which
she's
is
a
a kind of
special
horny
chick.
name to begin with.
What?
Princess Jenna became like that's almost a porny name in the next 10 years. That'll become a very
Jehnna.
Oh, and it's
Princess.
not Jenna like Jenna James.
But the one thing about that is
It's Shira.
Oh, hey Shira.
Put her on the next to the camera you got. Let me get a closer look. That's He-Man's cousin. you got the unicorn?
Wait, that's He-Man's cousin Shira, right?
Yeah.
The
Shira.
rumor was, and I don't think it's true, was that those dolls came off of Conan the Barbarian coming out, and then the toy people being like, this is a rated R movie. We can't release those toys. And they created the He-Man genre. I don't think it's true.
Interesting.
But Arnold Schwarzenegger looks like He-Man in this movie.
That's true. And even the creators
He
of
put
Conan.
on a lot of muscle for this movie.
He did, yeah. The creators of Conan, the producers, they sued He-Man for likeness infringement. And they lost. He-Man was too different. I guess they had laser beams and stuff. And I guess that made it different enough than Conan that was just like technology free, but in the universe they had spaceships.
That's such a barbaric lawsuit too.
Yeah.
Like, to continue on the theme of because it's like we were the first ones to make a muscle. We took the muscle guy and so how dare you make a muscle guy cartoon that's inspired by the movie that we made. I mean, it's like, dude, there's going to be a lot of big muscly guys in the future.
It's going to become a thing. The muscly guy. That's everybody. Okay.
If they could sue He-Man for that, they could sue Dolph Lundgren. They could sue,
Dolph, you gotta have muscles. We made the muscles. We have the copyright claim on muscles. So
yeah, exactly. That's not even like. Also, that was like such a thing like that for a period of time, about a decade after these movies out. That was like the height of that type of male body being like worshipped by the media and like I don't think women ever really were generally into that, but I think they were kind of pushed into it for a while. That like a guy who's like
this guy
be on steroids and can't hardly move.
On the women. Some women.
Well, there's always of course, they're always going to be, and I'm sure to this day, I know there's always some, but it was trendy then. It was like kind of like it was like a trendy thing to have like a muscle guy because there weren't that many of them. It was like a novel,
I like the joke of the older guy at the gym asking the muscle guy, which machine should I use to get the ladies? And he says the ATM.
That's really good. I never seen that one.
Who do you think scored more women, Wilt Chamberlain or Arnold Schwarzenegger in his.
That's a tough one.
I feel like Chamberlain probably had more swag or something.
Chamberlain traveled. He traveled around a lot with his team, going from on the road. So
Wilt Chamberlain was also arguably much more of a obscure physical specimen, being that he was 7'1".
Yeah, he was Shaq before there was Shaq.
I mean, like I'm sure every woman that's ever met him has kind of wondered what would it be like to be with Wilt Chamberlain. I mean, it's like it's a unique. He's like
he's a giant. He's a
giant. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, also right. And look, and let's be real about it. Arnold Schwarzenegger is not that tall.
He's not. He's 6.
He's very tall. He's not even. That's a lie.
Really?
He's tall. He's tall for a bodybuilder. Like an average height for bodybuilders. Historically, it's changing. It's getting different now because the technology and whatever, the steroids. Yeah. Generally, throughout most of the history of bodybuilding, it's just like gymnastics. Those people, to get that look, you have to have a small frame. So like 5'6", 5'7", that's about average throughout history for bodybuilders. Arnold was somewhere between 5'11" and 6 feet.
I'm 5'11".
Yeah, and that's very tall for a bodybuilder, but not very tall for a basketball player.
Yeah.
You can kind of tell when Olivia D'Abo is like getting taught how to use a sword by Arnold doing his drunk scene.
That's a funny scene, yeah.
Which is, I'm a stickler for drunk scenes, and it's not a great drunk scene.
But it's better than if it was good.
No, but there's a drunk scene in the earlier movie, which is, I mean, Arnold's not known for playing.
No, they were tripping. They were tripping.
But you can see that he's not that tall. Like Olivia D'Abo is.
Oh yeah, when they're right up next to each other.
They're right up next to him. I'm like, she's probably 7 inches shorter than he is, but she's probably also in boots. Yeah. So I mean,
they also and the flip side of that, it seems like they also took great pains to avoid having him and Wilt Chamberlain be very close together in shots, because that would have made him look like a really tiny.
Yeah. There's a lot.
I don't remember any shots with them side by side.
There's a lot of interesting shot composition because Richard Fleischer, the director, was like, I tried to have Arnold with as little clothes on as possible in this movie because he got flack for Milius got flack for not showing off the body enough. But you'll notice that like when he's next to Wilt Chamberlain is like completely clothed. Mm-hmm. Like Arnold's body is like greased up and like showing like the musculature, and Wilt is like completely clothed. So there's no contrast between the body types revealed at all. And then also we were talking about this because he put on so much muscle, Arnold, which he lost to wield the sword in the first movie. They're not even in the fight scenes are terrible with Arnold. They're like he's not even in the same shot with anyone he's fighting because he can't even move the sword very well anymore. What?
Like, let's be real about this.
Arnold
Schwarzenegger and the sword scene. I mean, he does that flipping the thing around his head like a few times, and every time he does it, he makes the same weird facial expression, like somebody, and his eyes are bugging out. Like he has no core. He's not in control.
That's okay.
He's like, this is the best that I can do. I'm doing you better than this.
But I think that those fight scenes are as good because as little boys, you get to fight with your friend with them with sticks and try to imitate all those like ridiculous moves, especially like the one where he takes the sword and it splits his face into like
That's how I injured myself.
Like that. Remember that? And his face is like, I remember as a kid imitating that like that. So that's what I thought what I liked about him. Like you're right. But also, having it have such goofy things and ridiculous is that you could, they're just easy to imitate. It kind of.
So wait, so you're saying you like fights that are worse because you can imitate them, like when you were a kid and couldn't pull them off?
No, I just think it's true. Just because a fight is accurate doesn't make it necessarily interesting. Like Conan the Barbarian, sure, because it's like Conan the Barbarian. Let me just say this: it's like an anthropological.
Listen, Sean, if you can admit that that this was an error, they wanted. Listen, if you could just admit that they probably would have liked to try to get Arnold Schwarzenegger to be a little bit more coordinated in those scenes than they were able to get him, but the fact that he wasn't able to do it ends up being comic gold and makes the movie better. Like, I can get on board with that. Okay. But if you're actually saying they try, no, I'm sure they tried to make it look goofy, because don't give me that.
Okay, no, I just like, so you go like,
No, I get it. I get it. I get it.
They didn't do that on purpose, and you can tell that was not what they were intending to do, and that's why it was so great.
Okay, yeah, that's why it was really, you got into it.
What's amazing though is when Sean pitched this film, I was like, who agrees with Sean completely that this is the better of the two movies? Roger Ebert. Roger Ebert says this is the funnier, sillier, bigger, more right for the genre Conan movie than the Million.
It's just fun. It's really fun, because with Conan the Barbarian is deep. You have father-son issues. You have, you have love and losing that love, and you only get to really love one person. That's in there too. And you get like the stolen girl and come and get me, bro, in the end, in Conan the Barbarian. It was like, yeah, come and get me, bro. We could do it. Because even in the first one, Conan prays is like, Crom, I never prayed to you before. All I know is that few stand against many. If you can't help us,
you pray to Crom.
Yeah, to stay the hell out of the way. Is that
who you pray to, Sean?
I tried when I was a kid, but saying Crom when you stub your toe, it's not
geeks all pray to Crom. Every geek admits sooner or later that I prayed to Crom once. I prayed to Crom once. I did.
I just dig it, because even in the first one, when he talks with Sibutai, and Sibutai is like, what god do you pray to? He's, and he's like, I pray to Crom. He stands high on his mountain. And then Sibutai says, well, I pray to the four winds. So my God is above your God. So my God's better.
I have a question.
Which I always like, what's wrong with those conversations?
Memorized? Do you have any of Conan the Destroyer memorized?
Do I?
No, right?
Wait.
No. So
no, I know
movies. Barbarian or Destroyer? You're like quoting whole monologues.
No, what I said from the beginning. Different things.
Oh, okay.
Different things. Okay, you're not going to compare.
Okay.
I'm just saying, you're not going to compare like Pulp Fiction to Days of Heaven, 1978, Terrence Malick. I'm just saying, they're different things, man. Like Quentin Tarantino, Terrence Malick, you know what I'm saying? You can't compare different
things. This is great.
Between those two films is that they're not, one is not a sequel to the other one.
Okay, no. That's another reason why I like this, because what other franchise do you really have? I mean, I'm just saying, there's not that many franchises that give you such a variety here. You get to go deep and you get to go silly. Same
Marvel
characters,
does that.
same thing.
Marvel does that all the time.
Okay, somebody else did it first. That's like I said. But you see, there's
Alien ruined their franchise doing that.
That's why it's so like, wait a second, what is this? Where are we? And you get such a variety. I just think and even Red Sonja. I'd watch that movie again.
Red Sonja.
No, I can't.
That's what
I don't even know that
really
movie.
should have done. Red Sonja. It would have been timely too, because the creator of Red Sonja died at age 90. I think his wife died 6 hours later this year.
What is Red Sonja?
It's the sequel. It's the sequel. They had Arnold on a 3-movie deal, and he didn't want to do it, but he did it. So
it's the sequel to what?
It's kind of like a loose sequel.
They don't call him Conan. They don't,
yeah,
I don't
he's
think
a
they call
priest.
him anything. Red Sonja is a female redheaded barbarian played by
Okay, I'm looking at it right now.
Bridget
So,
Nielsen, who was dating Sylvester Stallone at the time.
Brigitte
so
Nielsen.
it's the same director,
It is, yeah, Richard Fleischer.
Richard Fleischer.
Another thing about Richard Fleischer that I didn't add before is that he's been directing since 1946.
He directed 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Right.
Oh,
and
wow.
he did some documentary stuff, and he created a production house that owns the rights to Betty Boop and other cartoons. So he's
That
a
is wild.
multifaceted
Yeah, this
guy.
guy is been.
He directed Soylent Green.
Oh, he did.
Richard
favorite.
Fleischer directed Soylent Green.
Yes, he did.
Soylent Green.
1973.
Oh my god.
That's a
I
good
watched it
movie
with my
too.
mother this week for the first time with my mom. Yeah. Soylent
Wow.
Green's
Yeah, he's a
awesome.
Brooklyn Richard Fleischer. He's like a classic Brooklyn Jew born in 1916.
If you want it done right, man, go to the source.
He's a Brooklyn guy. He's a Brooklyn boy. Yeah. His
You gotta go to the
father.
source, man.
His father was an animator. Was Max Fleischer.
Yeah, they
Oh,
did
nice.
Popeye
Holy
and
shit.
stuff.
Did you know that?
I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
Yeah, I was like, I'm looking at it, reading his name. I know Max Fleischer. Yeah.
As long as
Yeah,
we're on lineage.
He's like, he was in a trade, he was basically like probably schooled by his dad into this. They both lived to 89 years old.
Mhm.
That's pretty
As
wild.
long as we're on
Max-
lineage, are you aware of the musical lineage of Olivia D'Abo?
No, I don't know anything
No.
really about.
Okay, so her father was in Manfred Mann.
Oh yeah, her father was in the band Manfred Mann.
Yes. And she
Yeah, he was-
dated Julian Lennon through the 80s.
That's
Get outta
She did.
here.
They were engaged.
They were engaged, yes.
Oh. Wow, he was dating up. I saw pictures of that guy. He was dating
It's amazing.
up.
She was all about daddy was a rock star and I date rock stars kind of girl.
Yeah, her and Valerie.
Yeah.
Bertinelli.
But
Judy,
yeah,
Judy, what did you think of the film more? Because it seems very machismo and goofy and made for little boys. So did you?
Yeah, what did it do to the little girl in you?
No, I got a quick question for Judy here. Judy, the mirror monster fighting scene.
Mhm.
What do you think?
I just kept thinking like, wow, they've come a long way with special effects. And I was
All right,
just,
okay.
that was like my focus was I was like, I don't know what, it's like half man, but like I was
Yeah.
like, why did they choose? I kept thinking, and this was just me, and I don't know if it's because I love special effects and I love a special effects artist. Like I think they're one of the most fun departments on sets. They get so excited and I love that. But I was just thinking like what made them choose, it was like half of his chest.
I have an answer.
Answer?
I do. Have you
Okay.
ever seen the movie Raiders of the Lost Ark, 1981?
Yes.
Okay, so you remember in the one of the later scenes there, Indy is fighting a giant Nazi with a bald head.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, and then the giant Nazi gets cut up by the propeller. Okay, that is a man named Pat Roach. He's like a famous
oh, this is
stuntman.
Pat Roach.
Yeah. And so the mirror monster, because they were lucky to get Pat Roach. He was a very skilled guy, and he was known at the time. So then they put that thing on him, probably because they they didn't want to afford a whole bodysuit, and B, a bodysuit might not do well in a scene. So, but they had to make him look scary too, and he's Pat Roach. He's probably like, no, I'm not going to set up for 3 hours. I'll give you an hour and you can put this on me and then we're good. And they were lucky to get him. So that's why I liked it. I just want to say, because that scene is as good as the ending of The Last of the Mohicans. That sequence of the mirror monster is technically brilliant. And it goes up there with any sequence of anything. They should be teaching that in film school. Yeah, it's goofy,
You think
but it's
that's
practical.
the ending of Last of the Mohicans?
Yes, I cry at the end of The Last Mohicans, and
Yeah,
I'm
well,
just
I didn't
saying.
cry at the mirror monster.
No, it's a different feeling.
No, I'm just saying, John. I'm just saying.
So far, Seth has been the
It's
best
just great
troll.
good stuff.
I'm not being.
I
someone told me to
definitely
be
would love
brutal.
to.
I won't be brutal.
No, troll. You're doing really good trolling as Sean.
No, I'm just saying the
pointing
music.
that out.
But the music is beautiful. You can have that at a wedding. But then in the end, Grace Jones takes the red cloak and she flips it up to see the dead body and it's broken glass. That's awesome. It's deep.
And it
The
makes no
glass
sense
monster,
at all.
but it's like magic and it's cool. And then the wizard kills himself because men used to have honor by touching the thing and blah, blah, blah. And that effect, it was just cool. I know.
It was like
magic computer.
You lift up the sheet of the guy that just died, and it turns out to be a bunch of shattered glass. I mean, that's just like the Wizard of Oz when they meet the wizard, and
magic.
It's just a little man behind a curtain or something. You know?
Yeah, that's a good movie
right?
too. You see, yeah.
Well, originally this script was going to be called "Fuckload of Wizards," because there's a fuckload of wizards in this movie. I think there's more wizards because you got Mako. You got the wizard in the tower who turns into a mist bird, right, who has one eye.
You got Queen Taranis.
You got she has who is Ursa in Superman 2.
Oh wow! Yeah, Sarah Douglas. Yeah,
Sarah Douglas.
She had a big filmography.
And then you have Jeff Corey, who was one of the greatest acting teachers in LA. It was Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, when they had the wizard fight. The wizard fight. Okay, so are we any other issues about the mirror sequence?
No, there's no other issues about the mirror.
Okay, the wizard fight.
I don't have any.
There was a wizard fight. Like imagine, that's the producer telling the writer, we're gonna have wizards make a magic fight, and they did. And these writers, it was
the most low budget wizard fight that you could do because they were
but
just
it's the only wizard fight between two LA.
Less is more.
No, you don't need to use special effects for the wizard fight because they're just using their mind.
That fight, man. Mako's students were like, "I'm staying with Mako," and Jeff Corey's students were like, "Fuck that! I'm going over with Mako."
That's right. Those were the two acting teachers. As wizards, which is perfect.
They were risking losing students over that, man.
You don't see that often.
I believe it.
I wouldn't go toe to toe with Susan Batson. That crazy little lady's gonna kill me. I wouldn't do it.
You see Mako sitting Indian style, he's like.
I mean, how clear do you think?
That's gold.
But my question is, how clear do you think the irony was to them that they're both acting coaches doing the wizard part?
I don't think it's ironic when you're an acting teacher that you get cast as a wizard.
It's what?
Speaking as an acting teacher has been cast as a wizard a couple of times now. I don't think it's ironic at all. They probably sat next to each other in makeup, being like, "How many of your students think you are a wizard?" "Oh, 9, 10.
No.
I tell them not that I don't have magical powers, but they all believe it. What are you having for lunch?" "I'm having chicken." "I'm having fish." I swear it probably was not I don't know. I
bet the directors and the casting people, they thought it was cute. They had a chuckle out of it. And then the two of them got together and they were like, these assholes, they think that we don't understand what they're doing. We know exactly what they're doing.
The writer of this film, I think his name's Stanley Mann. He also wrote Firestarter, which was filmed the same year.
Oh,
I love that movie. I wanted to set shit on fire with my mind.
It's funny you brought that up because it was a screenwriter, like a screen doctor. I guess what they call not really a screenwriter with a vision. This wasn't like a Charlie Kaufman or William Goldman thing, but the two guys who came up with the story are Roy Thomas and Jerry Conway, they're Marvel guys. Those are comic book guys. So
interesting.
So these two comic book guys put together this crazy stuff And then
Roy
they gave
William
it to
Thomas.
like a real screenwriter to make it seem,
Yeah. So Roy Thomas was the successor of Stan Lee as editor-in-chief of Marvel.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
It's interesting.
So I
crazy.
just like that because that's why it's kind of goofy, but it does take itself seriously, which is, at least for as a viewer, part of the enjoyment.
Well, that's the thing. Comic book writers, they know how to make movies.
I get, but let me just say back to the Jeff Corey Mako scene. The Jeff Corey scene, because he has these guards and stuff, and he orders them. You remember, he had these little metal things. He goes ching ching, and then the guys go. That's training. These guys are well trained, and I kind of like how they set that stuff up because the director's like, okay, so what do we do? Say this? He's like, no. And then Jeff Corey's like, I think I should just clink my things, and the actors know what they should do. That's what I like. I just always like those little touches, like ching ching, and then they go, and then they have that wizard fight. But that's all you need. I mean, sure, it's not like whooshy things, and nobody turns into a bird, but it's it comes from the thing. I just like that stuff because as an acting exercise. It could, that's what it is. It's like, okay, now acting exercise, move the thing with your mind, and you got to show that with your body somehow. I just, as a kid, I would sit in Indian style and do what Mako was doing often. That's all I got to say.
So speaking of, what about the horn god Dagon?
Oh,
You want to skip ahead? Okay.
No. I just because we were talking about Marvel movies and we're talking now, the name sounds vaguely Lovecraftian, which is cool because Conan the Barbarian was written by a guy named Robert E. Howard, who was pen pals with H.P. Lovecraft,
Makes sense.
who was one of the fathers of American horror.
Yeah, let me just say, at the time, HP would have been an older guy and Robert E. Howard a younger guy.
A younger guy.
Yeah, it would have been like he was trying to get advice from, but go ahead.
So there were all these people, including the guy who wrote Psycho, Robert Bloch, and they were all pen pals with H.P. Lovecraft, and they called him Grandpa Lovecraft, and he liked that. And he wasn't that much old. He was older, but he wasn't that much older. He may be 20 years older. He wasn't old enough to be their grandfather. The god Dagon sounds like Dagon or Cthulhu or something like at least there's a tribute to like a Lovecraftian god in the land of Hyperborea where Conan's whole planet is. But the thing is, do you know who that is? Speaking of big people.
In the suit?
In the suit.
Wait, I saw that. It's Kevin Peter Hall.
No.
No? I was wrong. Who?
It's Andre the Giant.
Oh,
In the Dagoth suit?
In the Dagoth suit is Andre the Giant.
that makes sense. Okay.
What?
Uncredited.
My
Uncredited.
husband-
How did you find that out?
And he pulled up a photo of
It says uncredited.
Oh, yeah.
Andre the Giant with Arnold.
That's right. Dagoth monster was Andre the Giant. That is crazy.
That's so weird because the year after, let's go, if I may take a little Andre the Giant anecdote, because the year after, in 1985, he did Princess Bride, where he was a character, he was a supporting character with lines and stuff. He even had a little monologue in there.
Well, you know what's really funny? Sorry to cut you off here.
Please.
I just want to give you a little bit of like props, because when I started watching this film, I immediately was like, this is like a Princess Bride ripoff, like stylistically. And then I come to find out, and then there was another movie I thought of too that came out later that I was like, it's ripping that one off. I was like, this movie came out before those movies.
Yeah.
Like, there's some original shit going on here that
Yeah.
people were probably biting.
Well, also that's like what H.P. Lovecraft did, because he was never big at the time, but all the writers at the time loved his stuff. And after H.P. Lovecraft died, his estate was bought by one of his friends, and they cataloged all his stories and held on to them, and then released them in like those pulp magazines in like the 50s. So that's how he stuck around. Like it's a storytelling that's that has like an undercurrent and other things like pop off of it, kind of influencing others, kind of like Velvet Underground. Like that album wasn't big, but every garage band had that album, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
So like, yeah, so that's what I always liked about this stuff. But with the Andre the Giant thing, it's weird knowing this anecdote because when people would visit him, his other wrestling buds, he would make them sit down and watch The Princess Bride because Andre was so proud of his work. Because he was working with some great actors there too. And I hear Mandy Patinkin didn't treat him well. When like Andre was forgetting his lines, Mandy would slap him, you know, to sort of help him remember. But Andre was very
nice
very
man. He has just such a great reputation as a friendly, nice actor. Let me tell you.
Talking about Mandy Patinkin.
He's from
Patinkin.
Because he's from musicals.
He's got a bad reputation as a jerk.
I mean, I want to work, so I didn't say
he's very like Mandy can be very like moody. Like you can't tell him what to do, period. There's just no way. So I just thought that was funny seeing like if Andre the Giant was in a Dagoff suit, like he saw his own acting career, you know, expand. Maybe he had higher hopes, like he was going to be the first John Cena, you know, Andre the Giant, as opposed to, you know, him now being like, you know, into the acting roles. But if I may say, now that we're talking about the Horn of Dagoff, Judy, that last sequence, what did you think of that last sequence where they were? When they don't kill the virgin and then the Dagoff becomes alive. What did you think of that stuff?
I was a little bit confused as to the whole storyline. Like I had a hard time focusing, just to be honest. I just thought, again, I was struck by the makeup. I was like, well, they've come further. I was like, it's a really ugly monster.
It's the ugliest monster.
Like, how easily he or she or whatever it is killed the female wizard or evil queen, whatever she is. Yeah, I don't know. I was just sort of struck by like watching it. I was like watching it, wondering like, oh, that looks like it would be fun to film.
Oh, okay. Because that's another sequence that didn't have a lot of dialogue. There was like a few there, but I just love that sequence. So I always like, whenever it was on TV, back when TBS used to be a thing, I would sit down, and if I had plans, that's it, because I wanted to catch that last sequence every time. I'll tell you that. And I saw it again for the 37th time. It's still amazing. It's just so intense, and they're screaming at each other. And the wind machines, they have like longer, so there's like wind. Like that's such a great idea. You can't do that with a computer. Just that idea. It's like, okay, guys. So he's a god. He's evil. Big things. All right, give me some ideas. He's like, well, we could have slime. We could have this. Somebody could have a wind machine. Wind machine. Good. Get a wind machine. And then the thing, it had like this. Yeah. And then Mako, get the horn, right? And that whole thing, it was one of the grossest things I have ever seen when he rips that horn out of Dagoff's forehead. I was like,
yeah, until The Fly, I can't think of anything as kind of gross. Until Cronenberg's The Fly.
Yeah.
But what's funny is that it's not like Cronenberg's The Fly, because he looks like a big, weird kaiju monster, except he's small. He looks like something that should be fighting Godzilla with those flippers.
Yeah.
That did look kind of goofy.
But then the ripping off the horn is like completely in like a horror genre, and weird. But what I really liked of this was probably my favorite thing in the whole movie is that when they show Dagoff for the first time, he's a beautiful god. He's this beautiful white porcelain Greek
perfect body
god. And then they put the horn on him, and he turns into his true form, which is a horrible Lovecraftian monster.
Right, but I thought that really stood out to me at the end of the movie. That like, it seems like all these guys are all like pagans from different worlds.
That's
and
with Lovecraft and
Right,
and
but the thing
Christianity.
that's so interesting is that even though it's a sort of a pagan myth story with pagan people from different pagan lands with different pagan gods, at the end somehow they come full circle and destroy all of the pagan idols and kill all the gods because it's an American Christian movie.
There's one true God.
Exactly.
Come on, like it's obvious.
But that's funny that's in there. Like they didn't have to do that. Like they just had to make. It's like the audience needs to see the idols get crushed. We got to crush the idols. We always have to crush the idols.
Well, this is in the era of G.I. Joe. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a moral lesson in there. You know.
Yeah, there's a Cold War subtle thing going on.
You have
probably.
to choose sides. All that
Oh,
stuff.
you know another reason why Roger Ebert likes this movie more?
Why is that?
Roger Ebert didn't like the original where Aryan Conan stands up on the temple and cuts off James Earl Jones' head in front of the cult. He was like, you're saying something there. You're saying something when a Germanic person cuts off the head of an African American in front of it. You're saying something.
Wow.
I didn't even think of that.
Well, Roger Ebert thought of that. I never thought of it. And I guess maybe now it's kind of woke.
Wait, let me just say this. James Earl Jones was in Conan the Barbarian.
He's Tulsa Doom.
But with that message, think about 2 years later, James Earl Jones was in Soul Man with C. Thomas Howell, and that whole fiasco. Now it's a big thing now. So maybe James Earl Jones, he had a different mindset back then.
I don't think the argument is with James Earl Jones. James Earl Jones has always been you can play whoever you want to play. He's on Dick Cavett saying that. The argument is Roger Ebert saying, what does it look like? And then I'm jumping to the fact that Roger Ebert likes this Conan movie better than the original Conan movie.
It's more wholesome for it. It's more wholesome for him, you think?
I think that Roger Ebert had problems with genre crushing. He was always big on how to do the genre the right way for Roger. He doesn't he doesn't like Aliens because he doesn't like how Newt is being chased around. He can't deal with it. He's really hard on some of the greatest horror movies ever made. He's just weird. He's just very weird and inconsistent with fantasy and horror.
What was that, Judy?
What?
I'm sorry, you were saying something I couldn't.
No, I was just saying that some people look for deeper meaning in everything. You know, where sometimes I think, you know, filmmakers, it's like, you know, you're on set and it's there. Sometimes things don't happen and you can't get a certain stunt or you can't get something or you have to change location or whatever happens. And sometimes people just choose something because they just choose something. And then people have to give it meaning. It's like you take any art piece, you know, I remember being in art school and I put something up and it was like, the reason that I did this art piece was because I like ran out of time and I just like threw something up and the meanings that people gave it were like brilliant. And so it's just one of those things on human psychology is that like sometimes the reviewer is telling you more about themselves than about the film itself.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to sort of like look at who's the one that's delivering the critique of it because it's sort of a combination of what the movie's going to be, you know, based on who's telling you.
That's a really good point, especially because the movie format is such a labor-intensive process, and there's so many moving parts. To think that like what we're experiencing when we're sitting down and watching it on the screen is what all of these different moving parts had intended is sort of absurd, and I think that's a very good point.
You know, now that I'm thinking about it, it's like, what was Roger Ebert thinking? Did he watch the movie? In the beginning, Thulsa Doom raids his village, cuts off Conan's mother's head right in front of him. And did that not happen? And then it was this whole journey revenge thing. All right, whatever. I just like, did you just, I don't get it.
Yeah.
Well, we're spending time criticizing. We're spending a lot of energy right now criticizing a critic. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
So
I mean, these guys, that's what they do for a living is like, you know, he's just playing his part. Roger Ebert isn't the final word on anything.
No.
That's a good point. And if I may mention, remember in Conan the Barbarian in the middle, when the Queen's guards finally caught up with them and they raided their little camp, and Conan and that one Queen's guard fought. That Queen's guard was Sven, who was Arnold's lifting buddy. And Sven was actually also in 1987's The Running Man. He was the security guard. He had a line in there too. Because I always thought that Sven guy was, I always thought he looked familiar, but I never placed him until I looked him up.
Wait, the guy who's in Barbarian?
No, Conan the Destroyer.
Oh, he's in Destroyer. Okay.
Yeah, with like the Queen's guards. Yeah, I thought he looked like a shorter dude from Conan the Barbarian, but he wasn't. Yeah.
That guy's Tigress of Gaul in Gladiator.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
The guy who fights with the tigers, who they bring out of retirement to kill Russell Crowe.
That's cool, yeah. Oh, and in the very end of Conan the Destroyer, where Queen Jenna now she takes that whole
But they all graduate
fellowship,
from high school.
the fellowship of Conan, and they all separate them. I just think it's funny because he's like, would you join me? And Conan's alpha is like, I'll have my own kingdom. They have that awkward kiss because Conan's just not there, man. It's Valeria straight up. He was sexual with Valeria, but now it's just Valeria, which is cool too. That's like my light went out. But that's like a cool moralistic message to have, like one chick, that's it. And so he then turns and walks away as if to go find his kingdom. The man's basically naked. He has like a fur Speedo on. That's it. No shirts, no pack, no tent. Is he going to get a horse? I just think that's funny. Or is this like a formal setting, like in the end of Star Wars, where they get the medals hung around? So
It is
formal wear is a fur Speedo. I always thought that was kind of goofy too, but Aaron said that in the beginning. He's like, no. Grease Arnold up, get him big, put him out there. Wait for those ticket sales to rock it up. I mean, I get it, but it's kind of a little.
No, that is like the ending of Star Wars. It's like a rated, like G to PG movie. It's like the high school graduation, and they all like look at Conan like, "Is it okay if I take the job? Is it okay?" And the thief, like, it's like, "Oh, I need a fool." I was like, "Well, thanks. I've been throwing daggers and like picking locks for the whole movie."
He killed a lot of people.
Court jester.
Yeah. He killed a lot of people in the movie. Like at least 4, if not 6.
Yeah, now she wants him to be the court jester. I don't recall him ever making her laugh. I mean,
the hell was his name?
Zula gets to be the captain of the guard.
Of course. Feminism wins.
Feminism moment.
She's the queen of the guard because she wanted it and she got there. Queen. It's feminism. There you go.
Yeah, but that ending is very children's film suddenly. Like she just had this really horrible defeat of this monster. And then it cuts to, hey, we're in a pristine white chamber. And
and I have a job for you, and a job for you, and a job for you.
But I want Conan. What I really want is you, Conan.
And then you get the awkward kiss, which is supposed to be some kind of a climactic moment, but it's very weird.
It is weird because he just, like, correct me if I'm wrong, he just stands there and she doesn't
kiss her back at all.
Probably the only way he was willing to do it.
Yeah,
You're like, they're going to say bad things about me if I kiss this teenager.
I was just wondering though in that scene, in that moment though, because he clearly is not interested. I was like, oh, is she gonna like fuck him up now? Like he just like dissed her in front of everybody. And she was just like, So I was just so caught by that. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like I wasn't expecting.
That was for me the most jarring thing about the whole film, and I still don't really know what to make of it.
Yeah, and I don't think of it as being like good or bad. I'm not like, oh, they should have done it differently. I actually kind of like that. I'm like,
yeah,
because it's so not like it was not a predictable moment. And then I cut to, and I don't know why I have no idea that at the end scene where he's just like sitting in like fire or something on his like little throne. I was like, it's like Game of Thrones. I have
The
no
narration. Yeah, he has like a scepter and he's like,
dimension.
It's like a freaking Rembrandt painting.
Voiceover, and I was like, I love this. Yes, I feel so. I don't know why. I just feel like yes,
pumped up. You feel epic.
yes, I do,
That's
and I
feeling
don't know why.
epic.
I don't understand it, but it's okay. It was fun.
Yeah, totally.
It's like the red smoke, and he's like,
Yeah.
but my master has a crown on a troubled brow.
Yeah.
You know what's influenced by this film, I realized, and that last image?
What?
Chronicles of Riddick. Because
Never saw it.
Pitch Black,
You're right.
because Pitch Black is unintentionally to him, his Conan the Barbarian.
Yeah.
And then he made Chronicles of Riddick just like Destroyer. Like right to the end where he like falls on the throne at the end. And like, you're like, oh, there'll be a sequel now because Riddick rules the universe.
Right, because
like,
you
no,
kill
there
with
won't.
swords.
No, there won't because you didn't really pay attention to the reviews.
And let me just say to our audience, if you have a choice between seeing Pitch Black or the Chronicles of Riddick, choose Pitch Black.
Choose Pitch Black.
Just choose that one's first. This Chronicles of Riddick looks cooler. I get it, but just Pitch Black. Just stay there. Okay. Honestly.
Duly noted.
that's it. But this is my case why Conan the Destroyer is a great film, and one of the things that I think it gets a bad rap because people immediately compare it to the first one because the first one was the first one, so of course you are. I get it, but just try to think about seeing it two different films because it's like when I have kids, whatever, I'm going to show them this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like every weekend, basically, I'm gonna we're gonna watch it again, boys. Boom, they're like, yeah. It's in every think about it. You can.
Can we edit that segment out and put it onto like a dating video for you? For women.
Yes, I think we need to do
I'm gonna force them to watch Conan the Destroyer.
First of all, you're gonna get women be like, oh, he wants kids. He wants kids. Oh, you're gonna get those, and then the other chicks are like, oh no, we need more Ivy Leaguer stuff. He'll watch, blah 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 blah. Yeah, I get it, but
we don't watch. We don't have screen time.
That's right. There's a word for it now.
I just as a screenwriter, I'm just boggled that you like this one more than the John Milius script. That one of the greatest screenwriters in the history of film.
Okay, it's true. Let me just explain that if I may.
And Roger Ebert too, but he's dead, so I can only question.
Okay, but let me just say one last. Okay, so let's just. I don't know how I approach this issue. Dances with Wolves. No, wait,
right. No. Okay,
no. Dances with Wolves. Like if that movie comes on TV, I guess that scenario doesn't happen anymore. But like Dances with Wolves, it kind of creates a mood for you to watch it. Okay. Conan the Barbarian, you kind of have to. I mean, it is an amazing opening sequence in the first one. You kind of want to be. You kind of have to be in the mood. Conan the Destroyer, it creates its mood. And that's one of the things, because the thing about film, I love cinema, but it goes deep, but also it kind of just plays with your nervous system, and you start thinking of things differently, and you're a little bit more confident, I guess, a little more hop in your step. And like in the Conan the Barbarian, the first one, it's like reading a novel.
Well, but Sean, let me ask you something. How old were you when you first saw Conan the Destroyer? Because that's important here.
Yeah, I was
in this calculation.
I was a kid. I had been at least 7.
Yeah. So the fact that you were a kid, it plays, I think, a big part in how you relate to this movie.
But also, yes, I do agree because it's a time in my life. But my mom was a little loose with the R-rated films, and she liked Conan the Barbarian, along with like movies like Aliens and Alien and The Godfather. And she would always say, "Come here, sit down," and she would put it in, and I would watch all this R-rated stuff. So I don't forget which one I saw first, but it was around the same time.
But this movie does something for you that it could never do for me because I never watched it at that age. Like if I have like Uncle Buck. If Uncle Buck was something I was obsessed with when I was a child.
I rewatched that recently, actually.
I had it on VHS and I watched it like literally over and over again with my younger brother from like the age of 8 or whatever onward. And now it's the same thing. If that ever comes on TV, it automatically puts me in a mood, draws me in. I have to go back and revisit it and like sit and watch and kind of redigest it as in my adult form. And I think there's a part of that at play here, but there's certainly something very specific about this movie that captured your imagination, and it's not hard to see why.
I just love it. Yeah, I see your point. I do like both films, but they really hit me in different spots. And
don't get me wrong, there's no acting teacher fight in Conan the Barbarian.
Well, Conan's more like an anthropological thing. You could study Conan for its like cultures and stuff.
No, it's like a study in Nietzsche. I get it. It's very like Zen. It's a tight script and it's.
Oh yeah, and here's a little quick note that a little fun fact that I forgot. Valeria, who was in Conan the Barbarian, not in Conan the Destroyer, she plays the evil queen in Red Sonja. She has a little mask on her face, which I always like. And it's true, like there wasn't a lot of fantasy stuff back in the 80s, but then in 86, Ridley Scott made Legend with Tom Cruise, and that was a fantasy thing. And then in 88 there was Willow, so that was another fantasy thing. But yeah, back then there was only like one fantasy movie, if that, every few years. Now there's like a bunch and stuff, and people are ripping off other franchises. But back then, yeah, I guess there really wasn't, because it was only like fantasy like on the game board with Hero Quest or Dungeons and Dragons. Now it's like you get to see this stuff.
And girls weren't into fantasy back then. Harry Potter made. It's a broad stroke. I know I'm saying something with a very broad stroke, but
I did.
Harry Potter kind of paved the way.
Wait, what was that, Judy? What was
that?
I
read the entire collection of R.L. Stein's Fear Street. So, yeah, I was like,
that's like 60 books.
What?
Isn't that like?
He's got like Goosebumps and then Fear Street. I'm not sure exactly how many. It's not 60. It might be like 20 or something like that. Yeah.
That's cool. Jesus, I got into reading later on in life. But R.L. Stein, he's a real man, and he really does write all that stuff. It's not like a ghostwriter or like a brand. It's really him. He's in Brooklyn too.
Yeah.
He's one of them Brooklyn guys.
I gotta look that up.
I still have a bin in my basement. So hopefully my daughter is into some dark stuff.
Well, you feed it to her,
feed it to her. You just
yeah, she did have a nightmare after watching half of Orca, so didn't have her watch Conan.
And I could understand that. The little monster. I just love that stuff. Even in the Mirror monster and the Dagoth monster, just that like every time I just dig it every time.
Yeah, I would love to do a movie like this though. It just looks like so much fun.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
I mean, you can show a kid, like if I had to sit with my nephew who's 7 and had to choose between which ones to show him, I would show him Destroyer because it doesn't have a mother's head getting cut off in the first like
3 minutes. Yeah. Yeah, man, I just love that.
But it does get. I noticed at first, like I mean, immediately I'm like, okay, this is a PG type of movie, and they're not going to show certain kinds of violence, yada yada yada, and they're not even actually showing like the point of contact with like the sword hitting people but then they do towards the end, like in the beginning, the first part of the movie. In the sword fights, like you see the blow happening, but it's all sort of like shot in a way that you don't really see where the sword is striking or when it actually hits the person. And then I'm thinking to myself, okay, so they're not even going to show stabs and slices and gashes, but then they sort of start to show more graphic violence towards the end. So it does kind of build into a more violent movie than you think it's going to be.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if any of you
it's
guys
true.
noticed
It's
what I'm
like-
talking
I just like
And the wounds don't, but the wounds don't do anything really, because like he cuts
Right.
Wilt Chamberlain's leg open, and then Wilt jumps on top of him. Like, it didn't
Oh
even
yeah,
happen.
he does that half.
Which I thought was kind of
Yeah.
a low blow, cutting him in the thigh like that. I thought Arnold, could have at least aimed a little bit higher.
Conan was trained by the warrior masters of the East. So remember.
Yeah, you got to remember those things.
Yeah, those guys. Because he was a little guy in the first one. He was a little war master and he slapped Conan, remember? I just even in the end, the music was great. You had that light, neat music before the virgin sacrifice and stuff. And then it got heavier and heavier. Even the dagger, remember that dagger? Like the handle was like a naked dude. That's hot. Like that ceremony. It's just all that little stuff you can't get anymore. I just think I think it's fantastic. And it's true, like the wizard, Mako, he didn't do much in Wizard. He was like, Wizard it open, remember? And he goes, and then he turns, he's like,
I love that.
I would do that stuff when I was a kid.
He found at the end of his life, he found his way to Samurai Jack, to being the narrator of Samurai Jack.
I'm glad he found work.
And no, he's great. He's a great actor. He's in the Sand Pebbles with Steve McQueen. He's a
Oh, really?
great actor. He was on Broadway with can't remember what the name of it was, but I think
Are you talking about Mako?
Yeah,
Huh. Yeah, he's a pretty prolific actor.
he's a very prolific actor, and really good. There was something else I was going to say. Oh, they supposedly were fights tooth and nail over the ratings of this movie, how they wanted to do it. Like
Oh, really?
there was
Really?
like supposedly like Dino DeLaurentis and Arnold Schwarzenegger were seriously against it, they had opposite views. Like Arnold, I think one of the reasons Arnold looked so uncomfortable is he's like, well, I'm not gonna do this because what I wanted to do was an adult movie again anyway.
Yeah.
And he left the fantasy genre after Red Sonja the next year and never came back to it.
All right. Well, I think we did it.
We did this one.
And
Let me
That
just
was
say
good.
one last thing. Olivia D'Abo, Conan the Destroyer, her first role, and then she became the main nemesis in Law and Order: Criminal Intent. So she had a lengthy career. That's where I know her from, and
She was the sister on what was that TV show with Fred Savage?
Wonder Years.
She was in Wonder Years.
yeah, Wonder Years. That's right. Yeah.
She was the hippie sister on Wonder Years.
The hippie sister. Yeah.
And Olivia's sister was a Bond girl in 1987's The Living Daylights. Timothy Dalton.
Interesting.
One of my favorite ones. Okay, thank you. Okay, yeah.
So before we go, I'm just gonna say, next week, if we can do this again, we're gonna do The Tenant, and Sean is gonna tell me. He's gonna explain why it's a terrible movie, of course.
I got my notes.
And I'm gonna have to. Yeah, and I'm gonna have to defend it against Sean, and I don't know where Seth or Judy are going.
I have never seen The Tenant.
Yeah, so and maybe Seth will see it together.
Yeah, it's free on Prime.
Yeah, I have it.
Okay.
So and then the following week, what was the film, Judy, that we?
Burnt Offering.
Judy's going to present Burnt Offering.
Okay, I'm gonna check
be
it out.
amazing.
Also from '76, just like Orca.
Love those 70s horror films.
Which has the greatest drunken actor in the history of English film since Richard Harris in Orca, a better whisperer, and who died drinking, Oliver Reed.
Good
He
to know.
came in, yeah.
Oliver Reed and Betty Davis is in that movie too.
Yep.
Wow.
Man, it's a great, and Burgess Meredith is in that cast. Karen Black.
Oh yeah, Karen Black. I like her. She's got enough stuff.
And she worked a lot with this director.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen
Yeah,
it.
who was my teacher, one of my teacher's friends.
All right.
All right.
All right.
Awesome. Looking forward to it, guys. Thank
All
you.
right.
That was great. And let's, we'll talk soon.
We're out
All
here,
right.
guys. See you.
Nice.
Later, Sean. I'll help you cut that video for this for your singles video. where you tell
Please
the
do.
girl.
Yes, thank you.
We'll do that.
You can cut my Orca video for the love of my life. You're gonna have to watch this with me.
Of course.
All right, guys.
I'll see you.
Take care.
Night, Judy.
Bye.